yeah, I had been very, very interested in birth as a feminist issue since my first pregnancy. And during that pregnancy, kind of having lots of light bulb moments of thinking, this is a really like overlooked area of feminism. I feel like I've gone back in time. You know, the way people are relating to me has suddenly changed, and the power dynamic has suddenly changed. So that's kind of where, I guess, where the title comes from. And yeah, birth plans, the thing about birth plans that gets misunderstood, I think, is that it's not just this piece of paper that you take with you when you have your baby that's like a shopping list. The point of the birth plan is the process of making the birth plan. So, 80% of the point of it is that you're looking into your choices, you're thinking of yourself being in the driving seat, you're, learning about what your options might be, and you're finding your voice. There are situations in birth where women don't know that they do have a right to decline certain procedures. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that women should decline procedures, but it's about how the underlying power dynamic changes when you know that you can. You are autonomous, you have body boundaries. Mm-hmm. And for many women, who have had their body boundaries violated, which, let's face it, many women have in their lives, that is an incredibly powerful thing to have in place, in terms of feeling safe, and then that feeling of safety, then allowing them to birth to have the best chance of having a straightforward birth experience, because birth is happening in the mind, mm-hmm. As well as in the body.
Dobrý den, mé jméno je Míša Lebeda a dnes vás budu provázet dalším dílem pořadu Hovory z gauče. A dnes tady máme velmi vzácnou hostku, je jím Milli Hill, a celý tenhle rozhovor budeme dělat v angličtině. Hello.
Hi.
I would like to introduce you, but I need to read it in order to be correct.
Okay.
So, Milli Hill is a renowned British journalist and best-selling author of the Positive Birth book, My Period, and her latest work, Give Birth Like a Feminist, that you can see here. She founded and led the Positive Birth movement from 2012 to 2021, a global network of antenatal discussion groups aimed at providing support and better access to information about pregnancy, childbirth, and motherhood. Her articles have been published in various media outlets, including The Telegraph, Daily Mail, The Guardian, The Independent, and Mother and Baby magazine. She has also appeared on BBC radio stations, Talk Radio, LBC, and numerous popular podcasts. Milli Hill is a mother of 3. Is it correct?
That's all correct, yes. Very good.
So I didn't forget anything important to be said?
No, that sounds perfect.
Great, thank you. So my first question is, why do we call the book Give Birth Like a Feminist?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think it was just a title that kind of came to me before the book did, really, and just sounded punchy and appealing. And yeah, I had been very, very interested in birth as a feminist issue since my first pregnancy. And during that pregnancy, kind of having lots of light bulb moments of thinking, this is a really like overlooked area of feminism. It's like I just hadn't really ever heard people talking about the feminist issues around childbirth very much. And when I was pregnant, I felt, gosh, this is a time when I feel like I've gone back in time. The way people are relating to me has suddenly changed, and the power dynamic has suddenly changed. So that's kind of where, I guess, where the title comes from. Is just to bring that idea onto the front page of the book. Yeah.
Okay. I have noted down a quoting. Giving birth like a feminist means giving birth on your own terms, because it's your body, your baby, and your choice. Which, for me, do you think that maybe the fact that you have put it feminism, the point of the feminism on the booklet of the book, don't you think that then you maybe are putting out the access of all this information that you're talking about, of the like human rights of having the choice of your body, out of people that are maybe afraid about what is feminism?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a difficult question, isn't it? Because what we could talk about, why are people put off by the idea of feminism? Because, you know, what's the quote? You know, feminism is just about differentiating yourself from a doormat. You know, that's what feminism seems to be, is just about women having rights and human rights too. So why are people put off by feminism? I'm not sure. I have written another whole book, The Positive Birth Book, which is, I guess, in many ways more universal and accessible. But I wanted this book to be political and to have that energy. And I think if people are put off by the idea of feminism, then they need to kind of have some thoughts for themselves about why that is. It's not my problem.
Okay, makes sense. If we are talking about the fundamental right of having choice, there are plenty of discussions, obviously also in UK, but here in Czech Republic we can see this, that it happens about the plan that the woman is making before she is giving birth, because before she is coming to the clinic. And there are always discussions if the plan is necessary, if it's about a wish that has to be accomplished or not. What do you think about this discussion, and what would you recommend to women when they are thinking about preparing themselves to pregnancy and what's coming next?
Well, I think it's a really revealing discussion. Like the fact that it becomes controversial, this idea of the plan, for me, I think that says a lot about what's going on under the surface, about the imbalanced power dynamic. Because I often see similar discussions around other choices that women can make around their birth that are a little way of taking some power back, taking some control back. So another example is doulas. Doulas get the same kind of raised eyebrow of like, oh, do you really need that? That's a bit silly. You know, what's wrong with just going to the hospital, and you have to trust them. You don't need a doula. Similarly, hypnobirthing, people say, that sounds a bit airy-fairy, you know, why would you want to do that? So these areas, water birth is another one. So areas where women are thinking about what they might want and then making a conscious choice to do something that might benefit them are the areas that get criticized, and people say that sounds trivialized, you know, and silly. So I think for me that raises a real alarm bell about birth plans, and to me it's like that's women's sign to definitely have a birth plan. Because if people are getting themselves in a twist about it like that, then I think that's, you know, that probably means that they should have a birth plan. And yeah, birth plans, the thing about birth plans that gets misunderstood, I think, is that it's not just this piece of paper that you take with you when you have your baby that's like a shopping list. The point of the birth plan is the process of making the birth plan. So, you know, 80% of the point of it is that you're looking into your choices, you're thinking of yourself being in the driving seat, you're, you know, learning about what your options might be, and you're finding your voice. And obviously, women are not stupid and they're not children. So this idea that a woman makes a birth plan and then she sticks to it so rigidly that she ends up heartbroken because she can't have this list of wishes that are on this birth plan, I think that's really quite a sexist idea in a way, because it's like saying, women don't really understand what a plan is. Mm-hmm. Like if we are having a party and we make a plan for the party, we also know that we have to make contingency plans. We have to think, okay, if more people turn up than I'm expecting, like, these are the extra glasses, or if it rains, then we'll have the photographs in the marquee. So people are used to making plans and then being flexible around those plans. And so, because we're adults. Mm-hmm. So I think, I think I'm 100% in favour of the birth plan. It's a brilliant process for women to go through. It's a shame that it gets this negativity around it. And I think that there is some misogyny in that negativity. and a kind of undermining of women's voice that we need to really listen to, and that's a good reason to proceed and make a plan.
I very like the idea of making the plan important also for at the stage of the process of preparing it, because she's go through it and she prepares herself for what she will be facing. You were also talking about this political aspects, etc. And so when I combine everything that you have said, and I really like the way how you perceive it, don't you think that then the issue is the fear of some people about the legal responsibility once the plan is on the table and it's not respected because for various reasons, and the woman gives her even acknowledged yes for changing the plan on the spot, but it would be by word only said and not signed, that then there will be some responsibility taken from it. Don't you think that this is maybe the point why there is a lot of discussions about it?
I don't think that's the reason why there's discussions about it. I think the reasons why there's discussions about it, or the ones that I hear, tend to be that you don't need a plan because you just need to trust the system. And I think that women's stories at the moment, women's birth stories, don't support that idea that just going in and trusting the system and going with the flow is necessarily the right thing to do. I don't think there's anything wrong with having some ideas about how you would like things to be. But I think, obviously women need to understand, and I'm sure they do understand, that a birth plan isn't, you don't really want to make the kind of birth plan that says, I want everything a certain way. And I've never seen a woman do this anyway. But you need to make a plan A and a plan B and maybe even a plan C. So if you want to have a home birth, let's say, for example, water birth or home birth, and you want candles and you want this and you want that, then you have to think about what happens if I have to go to hospital, what happens if I go overdue, what happens if I need a cesarean, and then make a cesarean plan and all of those things. So you're not just making one rigid document. So I think this idea that there's this terrifying piece of paper on the table that's going to cause a legal battle, I just don't buy that. I think it's just about a woman knowing her choices, thinking about plan A, plan B, plan C, and just being aware that you have choices. I mean, it's a shame that we have to say this, but there are situations where in birth where women don't know that they do have a right to decline certain procedures. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that women should decline procedures, but it's about how the underlying power dynamic changes when you know that you can. So one of the examples that I use is within a sexual relationship. Okay, so you're in a sexual relationship with your partner. You've been together for 10 years. You've never ever said no, maybe, to this person. You always are happy and you always consent to everything. But you know that if you say no, it is understood. You can say no. It is part of the underlying unspoken power dynamic of your relationship, that you understand you are autonomous, you have bodily autonomy, you have boundaries, and that they respect those boundaries. You've never ever exercised that autonomy, but it's there. And that makes the relationship what it is. The relationship is very different if you don't have that knowledge and that sense that you can say no. So in the same way in childbirth, it's not about a woman going and saying, I will not do this, I will not do that, being a birth diva or whatever people call it, which again, we could talk about that. It's a sexist idea in itself. But it's not about going and saying no to everything. It's about knowing that you can, if you want to, and that you are autonomous, you have body boundaries. Mm-hmm. And for many women, who have had their body boundaries violated, which, let's face it, many women have in their lives, that is an incredibly powerful thing to have in place, in terms of feeling safe, and then that feeling of safety, then allowing them to birth to have the best chance of having a straightforward birth experience, because birth is happening in the mind, as well as in the body.
Yeah, I very like the way how you compare it to the consent with your partner. And there is a wide, also plenty of topics around women that are giving birth after they had an experience in the past when they were violated or they had any bad experience, and then they come to deliver their baby, and there is a doctor who is a male, and it can trigger a lot of things. So the thing of consent is also very, very important. But you were speaking about the doulas and midwives that are also important in all this process, also when preparing the plan, and also preparing the women not to be rude and rigid on their plan. So what do you think is the next steps to bring midwives more competent into these processes?
I think one of the issues that we have, and this is a big issue and an ongoing issue, is that women are all damaged from the birth experience. Many women are. Including midwives, including obstetricians, including mothers, our mothers.
And the generations.
And the generations, yeah. So we are in a very difficult place now where not many women have been touched or been near, themselves or someone they know, that positive, empowered birth experience. There is much trauma. There's a lot of trauma. And, so in order to change birth, we need to address that, because it's very difficult for a midwife, for midwifery now and midwives are traumatized as well. And even if they're young and they're 25 and they haven't had a baby, some of them are becoming incredibly burnt out because they're working in a system where they are witnessing women being disrespected and traumatized regularly. And they feel very powerless themselves. And so they have to face a choice. Do I stay in this role and become hard against it? Or do I leave, or do I fight? And fighting feels impossible. So that's in a way is a huge question. It's not just about making birth plans and, it's not simple. It's a complicated issue to fix, I think, because, we just don't have very many women who believe that birth can be straightforward and that it is possible anymore.
In your book, you are also talking about the impact of the media on this way, how the giving birth is perceived, and it can also put a little piece in this trauma.
Yes.
Can you maybe reveal a bit how you perceive it in the UK? But I'm pretty sure in Czech Republic would be exactly the same case.
Yeah, well, a few years ago when I was writing the book, there was this program on television in the UK called One Born Every Minute, and I don't know if they have that, but it was like a fly on the wall. It's called Fly on the Wall documentary for, in a hospital with lots of different stories of real women having their babies. And it was really, really quite horrendous, just very, very medicalized. There's even a piece of academic research done on that program, which showed how they never ever showed women making choices. So the researchers are careful to say, well, it's quite possible that they were making choices, but they weren't shown in the program. But that it's the program maker's responsibility to show these things. Because these sorts of programs on television, I don't know what they have here in the Czech Republic.
We had some kind of, yeah.
They have a responsibility to, and they could help change the narrative. They could help heal some of that damage that we were just talking about, in the sense that they could show women being in the driving seat, making choices, and perhaps even having, more empowered experiences. And that has a sort of ripple effect, in changing the way people think about birth. But yeah, it's most often on television, birth is shown as an emergency, the sort of the jokey idea, of the soap opera where the woman is like, she's having a drink in the pub and then, I'm in labour, and it's all panic, everyone has to run to the car and
always the panic is there.
Yeah, or she has to give birth in the toilets in the pub with her, tights on or whatever. So there's that sort of idea that it's an emergency that women have to be rescued from, rather than something that the woman does herself.
Very full of adrenaline then, that we don't need.
Yes.
When you are talking about feminism, misogyny, it seems like it's a combat between women and men. But I know it's not the way how you perceive things, but maybe it would be nice to introduce how do you perceive the role of the partner, also the father-to-be, in all this process?
Well, that's a really interesting question too. I mean, there's been controversy, hasn't there, over the years as to whether men should be allowed in the birth space. And I know when I had my babies, I had my partner with me, and he was amazing, and I really was happy he was there. But I think, I don't know whether it's necessarily a gendered thing. I think perhaps it's just about thinking about what energy you want to have in your birth space. So it does affect things, you know, who is in the room and how they feel about birth, whether it's the midwife, like we were just talking about, what are they carrying, you know, what's in their invisible rucksack, you know, and for the man, if he is very afraid, or he has very negative ideas about, or maybe he's jealous or worried about nudity, or worried about, or maybe if the woman is worried, is this going to affect our sex life? Because that's sometimes joked about, isn't it? There's a horrible quote, it's in the book, where one guy said, I think, was it Robbie Williams? He made a joke and he said, it's like watching your favorite pub burn down. But,
doesn't help. It doesn't help to change the
it's the kind of thing you laugh at, and then you're like, oh my God, actually that is a really, really misogynistic thing to say on so many levels. It's, you know, it's making the woman
and hurtful for the women. Yeah.
A place that you a place to have fun, not a person. Dehumanizing. Anyway. So it's this, I mean, that if there is that attitude, it's out there. We can't pretend it doesn't exist. It was on television. The joke was made. Everybody laughed. It still gets quoted sometimes. I just quoted it. So yeah, and I think there is another argument to say that birth belongs to women, and that maybe having a woman-only space for birth might be a very interesting idea. But I think that we've probably gone beyond that now, and I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, it could be a woman's individual choice. It really is up to individuals to decide who they want to be around them. But I think we all need to think carefully about who we have with us at that time and what they're bringing into the space, whether they're male or female.
But including the partner into the process of also making him more conscious about what she's going through and how things are happening, and not just waiting that she delivers and then having the baby. Because then we can have the question, who is delivering?
Yes.
We have always these titles in Czech. In Czech, it's always like the doctor just delivered the baby and he gave the birth. Oh,
yeah.
Or the father just helped his wife to get the baby in the car because they didn't have time to go to the hospital. But the woman is not present in those articles.
Yes, exactly. Yes, there's often the articles about the heroic man who cut the cord when the paramedics didn't arrive at home and that sort of thing. Yeah, and he delivered the baby, exactly. I mean, I think there's an argument to say we shouldn't be talking about babies being delivered at all. Like, I don't know how it translates, but in English, like we deliver parcels and we deliver pizzas. Yeah. We don't deliver babies.
We give birth.
Yeah, but women give birth to their babies, and they, you know, ideally, I think it's a great feeling for a woman to. I mean, I think a woman can deliver her own baby into her own hands. You know, we could use the word in that way. I think and that is a very empowering experience to feel like, as the woman, that you were the one who gave birth. You did it yourself. Whereas often it's a feeling it's something that happens to you, that you are the passenger in. Does that make sense?
Great. Yeah. With Propolis, we went last year for an excursion into birth centers in UK and get a lot of inspiration in order to build something similar or having the concepts better in here. How do you perceive the system today in UK, and what do you think that has to be improved still and fighted for, if we can call it?
Well, I mean, since I stopped running the positive birth movement, and these two things are not connected, but certainly in the last 5 years, I think things have got worse. Like I say, that's not because I stopped running the positive birth movement. That's because I'm not doing it all. I'm so important. It's something to do with that. It's just simply the fact that when I was running the positive birth movement, we were at a crossroads. There was a lot, and there has been a lot in the past, 40 years. Janet Balaskas' active birth movement, Sheila Kitzinger, women coming forward and saying there is a better way. There is a better way, and we believe in it, and really pushing for that. And then we seem to get to this sort of crossroads where there was so much extra fear again about the safety of birth, and suddenly a stronger voices saying all of these women like Sheila Kitzinger and me are dangerous. What they're suggesting, that women are, have the power, is a dangerous idea. And I really feel that we stood at that crossroads for a while, and then we went down their route. So now we have more inductions than ever. We have more cesareans than ever. At some hospitals, 50% now in the UK. And, I can't see the relationship between that and improved safety to that degree. It seems very controlling of women's bodies, and there's a lot of fear still. So I think it's fairly bleak, actually. I think it's only becoming more and more medicalized. And obviously, I always have to say, I'm not against the medical intervention in childbirth. It's really important that I say that. Obviously, we know that there is a certain number of women who need help. So we all know, for example, if the placenta is over the cervix, then you can't give birth. You will die if you don't have a cesarean. So there are certain situations where medical intervention is really important and life-saving, and we don't want to go back to a place where women are not able to access help when they need it. But we haven't got the balance right at the moment, is my opinion. And I think that is to women's detriment, because there is a lot of trauma. A lot of women come to the other side of birth traumatized, and that's wrong. That shouldn't be happening. Even if they have intervention, even if they need it, they should still feel like they're being cared for in a way, and listened to and heard and cherished, because birth is a rite of passage. It's a rite of passage into motherhood. It's a really massive life event that no woman ever forgets, whether it goes well or badly or how it goes. We all remember that day very clearly for the whole of our lives. And it also shapes our sense of self, our relationship with our body, our confidence as mothers, our future confidence perhaps in our other areas of our lives, like work, like sexuality. It has, a big impact on a woman. So it is something that, we're not getting right at the moment still. And I feel a bit pessimistic about it, to be honest, if I'm honest.
Okay, hopefully things will happen differently. Why do you think that the water bird is so also, people are so afraid and considered as dangerous?
I don't know. I think, again, it's just about the power dynamic. The water birth is very disruptive of the power dynamic, because the woman is very, very protective. And I think I see it almost like it's almost symbolic. Like the water, the birth pool is like a sacred circle. And then the water is like the feminine element. And then in the middle is this beautiful woman, and she is not on her back. She's not vulnerable. She's upright. And, I think that's threatening, symbolically threatening to a system that doesn't see a woman in labor in that way. And also, from a practical point of view, it's like I say, it's protective. So if you want to touch the woman, you have to ask permission. You have to get in. You have to get wet. You may even have to take your clothes off. So you can't. It's just very disruptive to the power dynamic, and I think that's why people raise concerns about it. I can remember one time a few years ago on Twitter, I had seen this beautiful, beautiful movie of water birth. And there was a couple of different obstetricians who I used to talk to sometimes on Twitter. And we had good, robust discussions from different perspectives. And I said to them, look at this film of this water birth. It's just so beautiful. It will really, really, because a lot of obstetricians and some midwives even have never seen a water birth, or they have never seen an intervention-free birth ever. I mean, obviously obstetricians have hardly, why would they have seen an intervention-free birth? That's not what they do every day. So I said, well, just watch this film. Just watch it. And they said, I can't watch that. It will make me feel uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, that just says everything. Mm-hmm. You won't even spend 5 minutes watching this one short film of a different way. You can't cope. It's too hard for you. What's that about?
You were also talking about sexuality and the impact of giving birth and pregnancy and all these processes on the sexuality. Can you maybe say something more about that?
Well, I mean, I wish we had Sheila Kitzinger here because, she wrote a fantastic book called Birth and Sex, which is a really good read. And I think that we have perhaps forgotten that, people say that giving birth is like there's a continuum between sex and giving birth. It's like it's a journey further down the journey from, it's still a sexual experience. Does that make sense? I think, some women have orgasmic birth, and that again is very shocking, like water birth, very disruptive to what most people hold to be factually true about what birth is like. And yet quite, more women than you would think report having an orgasmic birth. Although it disrupts the norm, in many ways it makes sense because it's the same parts of the body, but it's very it sounds very odd in our culture because we don't think about birth as a sexual experience. We don't think about it as a positive, pleasurable, enjoyable experience at all. So,
what would you recommend to your daughter? In the age when she's thinking about having babies.
I do think about that sometimes. I have 2 daughters, and obviously I think about my son as well. What will happen to him. But
my fault. I just asked for the daughters, but in fact you have to ask both. Yeah.
I'd be the mother-in-law from hell.
Yeah, sure.
No, I mean it's interesting. I mean, obviously, I think they will be grown-ups. I mean, my eldest is now 17 and she's already a young adult, really, and she needs to find her own path, just like I did. I did things differently to my mother, and we all do, don't we? We all find our own path. So I'll just be there in the background, and they'll be able to dust off my book and say, "Oh look, Mum wrote this. It's about childbirth. Oh, have a look." They might want to know what I think, and they might not. But I mean, I think I will find it probably hard. I think I will feel very protective of them and want to help them to navigate the system. This is how I feel about all women, to be honest. I find it hard to sit on my hands and not say anything. I do sit on my hands and not say anything because I feel that if I'm, like, say I meet a pregnant woman on the train, it's none of my business how she has her baby and the choices that she makes. But another part of me just wants to say to her, it could be so good, because I think that can be really powerful. I'll tell you a little story. For example, when I was first pregnant, I went out for dinner with a big group of friends, and one of them, their mothers was there, and she was maybe in her 60s. And she sat next to me, and I was pregnant for the first time, and I was really, really scared. It was all I was thinking about. I was so frightened of giving birth. And she sat next to me, we were chatting. She said, "Are you frightened?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, she just looked me in the eye and she said, "It's not really that bad. It's not as bad as everyone makes out. It's actually fine." And it was, for me, that was like, really made a big impact. It sounds like a small thing, but it was like just those few words of like reassurance that, she was like, it's just like, when you have your period and it's really, really bad. It's just a bit like that, but maybe a little bit worse. And I was like, oh, okay, I could kind of think I could handle that. She made me feel like maybe everything everyone's saying is not, not true. And maybe it isn't really as bad as all that. And it was great to hear those words. So back to my daughters, I don't know. I will probably talk to them a bit. Well, they, and I hope that they don't have a traumatic experience. That's my only hope, really. It's a horrible thought to think of your daughter being, in that place where.
Back to the story with the old women. Maybe we definitely need to spread the good experience stories then, in order to not frighten women, and then maybe this can help to decrease the traumas then.
Yeah, well, that was one of the reasons why I started the positive birth movement, and that was kind of part of the ethos of it, was to spread positive stories via social media. And, you know, back in 2012, that was quite a new thing. Now it's everywhere, and that's brilliant. That, you know, social media has made a big difference like that. I think when I was pregnant for the first time, I didn't watch any birth films because there was no Instagram then. This was in 2007, 2008. My daughter was born, my first baby, and now it's everywhere. You know, so I think that's really, really, really good that women can watch these empowering birth videos and see a woman having a water birth, let's say, and think, oh, that doesn't look that bad. She looks like she's really okay. You know. So I think that's really good. But yeah, positive birth stories, hearing other women's positive experiences is a brilliant thing. Sometimes even that could be controversial because, you know, there's this idea. I think that's because there's so much trauma around. It can be triggering for people. If you say, well, I had a fantastic birth, that can be hurtful to people because they didn't.
This is the other side of the story, that most of the time when you have a good experience, you cannot tell it to your friends who didn't have the good one, because they feel then more traumatized by the fact that maybe they handled bad, and that maybe it's their fault that they were not able to have something like beautiful and nice. So this is the other hand, or how to balance all this, because we definitely need to be able to describe our experience.
Well, that is exactly it. And what we need to do is put the blame back onto the system. It is just like victim blaming. That women feel, you know, oh, I shouldn't have made that birth plan. I shouldn't have wasted all that money on hypnobirthing. I shouldn't have got a doula. They were right. You know, I'm so stupid. Why did I get my hopes up? Now I've had this traumatic experience. It's my fault. My body doesn't work properly, and I shouldn't have tried so hard to have, this amazing birth. How stupid of me. And women need to understand that it's not their fault that they had that experience, and that the system, and again, I'm not talking about 100% of the time here, but in many cases, a woman was not properly supported for her body to work the way that it should. We don't put women in an environment that supports natural physiological birth. And we expect them to give, you know, like one time I wrote this article a long time ago about pandas in the zoo, because I think it was in the zoo in Scotland, they had this pregnant panda, and they built this beautiful enclosure for her, and they closed that whole corner of the zoo, so no people could walk anywhere near it. And they had special lighting, and they had special heating, and they had special soft areas, and this, that, and the other.
All this for the pregnant panda.
Yeah,
why cannot the woman have this?
Yeah, they understand that her body would not. They wanted her to have this baby panda, and they understood that her body would not work properly if it was not put in the right environment. And yet we don't have the same understanding about women.
I want the same cage as a panda in Scotland.
Exactly. But then when women's bodies, I don't want to say don't work, but when they don't, you know, when everything doesn't proceed chronologically in a straight line, they're like, oh, it's the woman's body that's the problem. They don't think about anything outside of that, about the system. So,
wow,
blame the system, not the woman.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for all these wonderful thoughts, and we have this translation in Czech language, so also all the people in Czech Republic can read your book, Give Birth Like a Feminist. So if you're interested, you can have it in original or in Czech, and read more in details, like all the stories and examples of how the system can be changed, or where the issues are, and how can we handle it together. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.